Hey Miracle Fighters, it's Pton, and welcome back to the Team Miracle 4 channel. Today I'll be doing a deck profile for a V Premium deck I've been having a lot of fun with ever since its release, and that'll be my Nubatama Hanzo deck. The Hanzo deck is a deck that was introduced in the Shinemon Nita arc of the V series of Cardfight Vanguard, and it was a deck used by Shinemon's teammate Mark Whiting. Hanzo originally focuses on bouncing rearguards on both players' fields and forcing the opponent to discard cards equal to the number of rearguards returned back to your opponent's hand. The Hanzo deck also introduced the Evil Decoy tokens, which are special tokens that cannot attack and cannot boost, but can intercept from the back row. Hanzo was a deck that was originally intended to be used with Protect 2. Now, out of all the original V Premium or V series bosses, Hanzo has got to be up there on my list. Right, it's definitely one of my favorite original cards that came out in V. And when we got his alternate version in V Premium in the Clan Selection PLUS Vol.2 along with more support cards, I fell in love with the deck even more. So without further ado, let's get right into the deck profile. Okay, so the deck has actually changed quite a bit from its original iteration in terms of its game plan, I guess. So, but we'll first talk about the main card. The main card is still our 4 copies of Evil Stealth Dragon Tasogare Hanzo. You still want him as your main Vanguard. So Hanzo's effect. Hanzo is a really long effect, but it's just one long effect. Its effect is, during a main phase, you may retire 2 grade 0 rearguards and give Hanzo plus 20,000 power until the end of turn. And then you can choose any number from all rearguards on the field, including both you and your opponents, and return them to your hand. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, your opponent will choose cards from his or her hand equal to the number of cards returned and discard them. Basically, Tasogare Hanzo here is a board wipe for your opponent that also gains a hefty power up. Hitting for 32k and board wiping is actually pretty decent. Now, Hanzo actually gives your opponents the choice of what cards to discard from the hand. Regardless of what cards they discard, you're actually still gaining advantage off of it. Because if your opponents discard their rearguards, then it's just a retire with more steps. But if they choose not to discard their rearguards and keep, their rearguards and discard other cards instead, like maybe triggers and stuff, then they will actually lose out on defense during your offensive turn. As for the cost, Hanzo only needs to retire 2 grade 0 rearguards. Evil Decoy tokens are grade 0 rearguards, hence why the Hanzo deck is full of Evil Decoy token generators. But since Hanzo doesn't explicitly state tokens, you can actually retire triggers and stuff if the situation really arrives. Another thing I like about Hanzo is that since it returns not just your opponent's rearguards but also your own rearguards back to your hand, it can allow you to activate on-place effects multiple times in a turn. So by bouncing and calling cards like Sakura, Fubuki or Gale, which I'll talk about later on, you can actually perform your card's abilities twice in a turn, in a way, right? So if let's say you have an on-place countercharger, with Hanzo you can technically use it to countercharge twice in a turn. If you have an on-place draw a card kind of card, with Hanzo you can use it twice, right? So I guess in a way Hanzo doubles the effectiveness of your cards, and that's quite neat. However, this is also the same for your opponent, so in some situations it may be better to leave certain rearguards on your opponent's field, on the field, and not return them back to their hand. Maybe cards with strong on-place effects or annoying on-place effects, you may choose to keep it on your opponent's field instead, to prevent them from activating their on-place effects again the following turn. Sometimes also, if I notice that my opponent's hand is like full of grade 3s or stuff because of their drive checks, and they have like quite a number of grade 1s or 2s on the field, sometimes I may actually choose not to return any cards on their field back to the hand to prevent themselves from increasing their total shield value of cards on their hands. So while Hanzo's board wipe is good, sometimes it can be a case-by-case basis whether you want to use it. But yeah, apart from that, Hanzo with that ability still hits for 32k, which is really nice on a Vanguard. And early game, your opponent would most likely be taking a lot from Hanzo. Okay, now with Hanzo out of the way, we have the star of the new deck, the new version of Hanzo, and that is 4 copies of Evil Stealth Dragon Tasogare Hanzo. This is Hanzo, but in the dusk form. Okay, so let's have a look at Tasogare Hanzo's effect. So, very lengthy effect. It takes out about half of the card. And I think Tasogare Hanzo is wildly different from Akatsuki Hanzo. So he has 2 effects. The first is a defensive style effect. The second one is more leaning towards offense. So his first effect states, at the beginning of your opponent's turn, if Tasogare Hanzo is in your hand, and your Vanguard is Akatsuki Hanzo, that's why this is still our main card, you can discard 2 cards from your hand. If you do, Superior Right Tasogare Hanzo from your hand and give all of your rear guards a plus 5000 shield until the end of turn. At the end of the turn, you write an Akatsuki Hanzo from your soul as rest. So you revert back to Akatsuki Hanzo, because it's obviously the better Vanguard on your turn. Now this is a really interesting body replacement technique that trades dead cards in your hand for increased shield throughout your board. Especially because the Hanzo deck utilizes Evil Decoy tokens, which are cards that can, as I've mentioned, intercept from the back row. With Tasogare's first effect, you'll be giving them plus 5k shield when they intercept, so instead of 5k intercept, they become 10k intercepts. This ability, while costly, do occasionally come in handy in certain games. There have been games where I draw a bunch of draw PGs or have protect 1s, but I'm facing decks that either, have Sentinel Restrict or Exile clans where, raw shield is sometimes more economical for guarding than using Sentinels and stuff. Also, with a certain new grade 2 that we'll talk about very soon, Yamishibuki, it has now become so much easier to spam your Evil Decoy tokens. And more often than not, you will have 2 to 3 Evil Decoy tokens on your field during your opponent's turn. Having Hanzo buff their defense to 10k really makes a big difference. And it's not just your Evil Decoy tokens. If you have grade 2s in your front row, they also become 10k intercepts that can really come in handy in especially right now where a lot of decks are really aggressive. Now, even with that said, I know many people's opinions of this effect is that the minus can be a bit too much sometimes, and I do not disagree. But this skill is still important as a way to put Tasogare Hanzo into your soul without needing to spend a turn to write it. Now, putting Tasogare Hanzo into the soul is very relevant because that is part of his second effect. And the second effect is, when your Vanguard with Hanzo in its card name attacks, you may retire a rearguard that retire grade 0 rearguard and call it to rearguard circle. Until the end of turn, the called Tasogare Hanzo gets plus 20,000 power and can attack from the back row. At the end of that turn, put Tasogare Hanzo into the soul, and if you put it into your soul, you can call an Evil Decoy token to rearguard circle. This means that with Tasogare Hanzo, you'll be able to create multi-attacks mid-battle phase, and the number of additional attacks you can make depends on how many grade 0s and tests on your field that you have, and how many Tasogare Hanzos that you have in your soul. Hence now you can see why the first skill is sort of relevant in order to put Tasogare Hanzo into the soul, because by superior writing and then writing back into Akatsuki, you just guaranteed, a Tasogare Hanzo in your soul. And Tasogare Hanzo is currently the deck's main win con, I guess, in a way. So the main idea of the deck right now is basically to get as many Tasogare Hanzos into the soul, and then use your new token generators to create tokens that can be retired as fodder for Tasogare during a mid-battle phase. This will then allow you to call out your Tasogare Hanzos when your Vanguard attacks during the battle phase, and create multi-attacks to further pressure your opponents. Previously, if you played Hanzo before, you will realize that the Vanguard Hanzo is usually your highest hitter on your field. Your rearguards are generally don't really hit for that high numbers, and they don't really put out too much pressure. So if you're up against another Protect deck that uses Protect 1, most of the time they'll be able to just easily guard your Vanguard, and the rest of your attacks are just like trigger guards or whatever. Right now, with Tasogare Hanzo, you can create 32k rearguards as well, and it's multiple 32k rearguards if you have multiple Tasogare Hanzos in your soul. So 32k is either a heal guard, or most of the time it's 2 cards to guard. Tasogare definitely has upped the offensive aspect of the deck, giving the deck a bit more push to end games. Being able to replace itself with an Evil Decoy token at the end of your turn as well is also really good because it means that you don't lose out on your Evil Decoy token intercept the following turn. And you can technically treat this effect as free, right? Because you retire grade 0, and if it happens to be Evil Decoy token, you still get it back at the end of your turn. And because Tasogare Hanzo goes back into the soul, you can prepare to use its effect next turn. It's a repeatable effect as long as it remains in your soul. So yeah, that's our 4 copies of each of the Hanzos. So 4 Tasogares to be put into the soul, and 4 of Akatsuki as your main Vanguard. Now remember, I said Akatsuki Hanzo's full effect only activates when your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater. So let's say in games where you're going first, sometimes I actually do find myself riding Tasogare Hanzo first before I go into Akatsuki Hanzo, just so I can guarantee a Tasogare Hanzo in the soul without needing to use its first effect, because maybe I don't have much discard fodder in my hand in that game. So yeah, if you're going first, Akatsuki Hanzo's effect may not be that important yet, so you can actually have a turn to where you go into Tasogare Hanzo, setting up for his multi-attack the following turn. One thing to add before I move on is that Tasogare Hanzo's effect to Superior Ride actually helps accelerate your gift generation, because every time you ride, you are getting a gift. So with this in mind, Tasogare can theoretically work very well with Protect 2 in terms of making your Evil Decoy intercepts count, or giving further buffs to your field, especially on your attacking turn, because Protect 2 also gives the unit on that circle plus 5000 power on both players' turns. However, even so, I still highly recommend Protect 1 most of the time, because you do have to discard 2 to Superior Ride into Hanzo in the first place, and the Hanzo deck doesn't really plus much. We generate tokens, but we don't really generate hand size, and so unlike Shiranui, the deck actually does like a bit more in terms of draw power. Losing 2 from hand feels really risky given that it's your defensive turn, so most of the time I still go into Protect 1 just so I can maintain my hand size, and Protect 1 also acts as really good discard fodders as well. But yeah, I've gone into Protect 2 with Tasogare Hanzo, and it's super fun as well, because your intercepts now become 20k. Each Evil Decoy token becomes a 20k intercept. You get 10k off of the Protect 2, making it 15, and with Tasogare's on-ride effect, it gets another 5k shield, so it's a 20k shield. So it really depends on the matchup, it really depends on the cards you draw and stuff. So if you started off well with a healthy hand size, maybe you can choose to go with Protect 2. Or if Protect 2 is actually really better in that matchup, then you can also just go into Protect 2. Since with Protect 2 also, Hanzo, your attacks actually become bigger, and Hanzo, being a 32k rearguard attacker, can go up to 37, 42, depending on how many Protect 2 you have stacked on your field. So it's something interesting to consider as well. And with that, we are done with the 2 Hanzos, the 2 different types of Hanzos. We want to max them both out. We want Akatsuki as the main Vanguard, Tasogare to max out to see as many copies of him so that we can put him into the soul either with his own effect or with another card's effect that I will talk about very soon. Now besides these 2 grade 3s, I'm also playing 2 copies of another grade 3. This one came with Jamio Kongo. This is Stealth Rogue of Proscription Mizukaze. This card has a lot of potential, especially with Magatsu Storm, and it has also made an appearance in Shiranui. Basically, it's a card that works very well with decks that can multi-attack, with Nubatama decks that can multi-attack. And with Tasogare Hanzo, the deck can definitely multi-attack. Hanzo has always been able to multi-attack with Akurao, but that was not a card that every Hanzo player played, and it can be a bit of a hefty cost as well in terms of retiring 2 Evil Decoy tokens, because Hanzo also needs to retire 2 Evil Decoy tokens. And so compared to Akurao, I think Tasogare Hanzo is a more consistent multi-attacker. But anyways, Mizukaze's effect reads, when placed on rearguard circle, you can Soul Blast 1 grade 3, and until the end of turn, your opponent cannot call grades that he or she had called turn from hand to guardian circle. In other words, it's a guard restrict that prevents your opponent from guarding with the same grade for more than 1 attack. To give an example, let's say we have such a field. So let's say we have something like that. We have Zangetsu giving them boost, and now this will hit for 17. 17 is usually a 5 to 10k guard. Let's say we're up against a Force Vanguard, so they use 5k to guard, and let's say they use a grade 2 to guard. So for the rest of the turn, they cannot use any more grade 2s to guard. And you attack with this will be 17, 20 at max. So this will be usually a 10k guard. Let's say they use a grade 1 to guard. For the rest of the turn, they cannot use any more grade 2s, they cannot use any more grade 1s to guard. So for your Vanguard's attack, they can only use grade 3s or grade 0s. And let's say they use grade 0. And from your soul, we have Tasogare Hanzo, skill, retire, call. So they use a grade 0 to guard. Let's say they PG8 with the draw PG. Now for your 4th attack, they cannot use grade 0s, they cannot use grade 1s, they cannot use grade 2s to guard. They can only use grade 3s to guard. And right now, Hue Guardians are not out yet, so the only clans that can really guard with grade 3s are Dimension Police, Murakumo, and I think Dark Irregulars. But apart from those clans, other clans generally don't have grade 3s that can guard, and so for this attack, your opponent will most likely be taking it. So yeah, I hope that short example shows just how you can use Mizukaze with Tasogare. I think it's a really neat combo, and especially so because Tasogare Hanzo can multi-attack with high numbers, it makes it harder for your opponents to get around the guard restrict. So yeah, as you can see from that short example there, Mizukaze and Tasogare Hanzo has a lot of combo potential with each other. Basically, by your 5th attack, it will definitely land a hit because there's not that many, because there are only 4 grades in Vanguard, and even if your opponent can guard with grade 3s, which is going to be happening with Hue Guardians on the horizon, this deck can still very easily make 5 to 6 attacks, as long as you see your pieces and you're able to put Tasogare Hanzo into the soul. However, with that said, I know Mizukaze's effectiveness will go down in the near future with Hue Guardians, because every clan will be getting a grade 3 that can be used for guarding, but till then, Mizukaze is the most effective card in the Hanzo deck that you can utilize to really push for damage on your final turn. So yeah, I really like Mizukaze. I think 2 copies is enough. You don't want to see him too early, and you also want to have enough copies of him to be able to see him. So 1 copy is too little. I think 2 is just nice. Okay, with that, that's all the grade 3s. We play 10 grade 3s. Now we can move on to our grade 2s. Okay, to start off first, we're grade 2s. We're playing 4 copies of the new Evil Stealth Dragon Shibuki. This card came with Tasogare Hanzo and is probably one of Nubatama's strongest grade 2s right now. So it has 2 effects. The first effect is during your turn on rearguard circle continuous, Shibuki gets 5000 power for each of your grade 0 rearguards. Shibuki getting a power up for the existence of grade 0 rearguards on your field offsets the fact that the tokens cannot boost. Now tokens are grade 0 rearguards, and as I've mentioned, they cannot boost, then they also cannot attack. But with Shibuki, it sort of makes them 5k boosters, and it gets 5k for every single one on your field. So if you have 3 in the back row, it gets plus 15, making him hit for 24k. But the best part about Shibuki is its second effect, which is when it attacks, you may counterblast 1 and return a card from your one of your other rearguards to your hand, and call up to 2 Evil Decoy tokens to rearguard circle. Now, unlike most, if not all, other token generators, Shibuki is a mid-battle phase token caller. This allows you to call down actual units that have higher power or better skills as attackers or boosters, while still being able to generate Evil Decoy tokens for you to use on your opponent's turn. Returning a rearguard back to your hand is also really neat because it allows you to once again activate on-place effects the following turn, or increase your hand size so that you can use those cards for guarding on your opponent's turn. Also, if Shibuki is on rearguard circle and you used its second effect, it can also power up itself by 10k power. So you can see how its second effect actually helps its first effect as well. Now, if you remember Akatsuki Hanzo's cost, it's to retire 2 grade 0 rearguards during your main phase. So most of the time you're retiring your Evil Decoy tokens during your main phase. But then Tasogare Hanzo here requires you to retire your grade 0 rearguard during the battle phase instead. Unless you have 3 Evil Decoy tokens on your field, you will not be able to fulfill this condition most of the time. So that's where Shibuki actually comes in really handy. So with the existence of Shibuki, you can just use your other token generators to generate 2 tokens for Akatsuki Hanzo to kill on your main phase, and proceed to a battle phase even without having any Evil Decoy tokens. As long as you have Shibuki on the field and you use it to attack and use its second effect to bounce 1 rearguard to your hand, you can generate 2 more Evil Decoy tokens during your mid-battle phase, and for which one of them could be used to be retired with your Tasogare Hanzo's effect. In fact, if you have 2 Tasogare Hanzos in your soul, this also enables double Tasogare Hanzo plays. Overall, Yamishibuki is a fantastic enabler type card for the Hanzo deck, and its second skill being so generically useful also means that it can actually see play in other Nubatama builds in the future and stuff, like Magatsu Storm. Magatsu Storm requires your cards to be bounced back. Well, this card does it, and it also generates the Evil Decoy tokens that can be retired as fodder for Magatsu Storm's effect. So that's just one example of why Yamishibuki is such a generically good grade 2 for Nubatama. In fact, I also think it's a really good card to be used in premium Nubatama as well, especially if your deck revolves around the premium collection stride. Okay, now apart from Yamishibuki, we are still indeed playing the original token generator, your 4 copies of Evil Stealth Dragon Zangetsu. Now this is your trusty token generator. Can never go wrong with this card. It's basically activated counterblast 1, call an Evil Decoy token to rearguard, circle, and until end of turn, all of your token units get 5k power and the ability to boost. So Zangetsu's effect is an activator one, so it allows you to create as many tokens as you need for that situation. And also giving them power up and boost is really nice. It's really nice because it makes them not as cloggy on the field, it makes them actual boosters. And this power up stacks, so if you call one first, that card gets 5k, that one gets 5k. And if you use this skill again the same turn, you call another one, the new one gets 5k, but the old one gets another 5k, so it becomes 10k booster. And you can actually use this to create pretty high numbers on your rearguard columns as well. Zangetsu also is a second effect that doesn't really come up too much, but when it comes up, it can be very interesting. When it is attacked, you may change that attack's target to one of your rearguard tokens, and if you do, return Zangetsu back to your hand. This doesn't really come up too much, but I guess it just discourages your opponent from attacking Zangetsu, because any attack towards Zangetsu is just a 5k shield, if you think about it. The only real way to get rid of Zangetsu is to bind or retire, which a lot of clans can do already, but it's still there as a skill that exists to inconvenience your opponent, I guess. Yep, but apart from that, Zangetsu is just a trusty token generator, and I feel it still has to be played at 4 for the Hanzo deck. And we've come to our final grade 2. We are playing 2 copies of Stealth Dragon Magatsu Gale. Magatsu Gale is once again one of our strongest grade 2 Nubatama units. 2 effects. The first one is on plays on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. Counterblast 1, so +1, you draw a card and you get 6k. Easy power up and easy +1 to your hand. Right, so it allows you to draw into your deck, see more pieces and stuff. Him hitting for 15 is also really great, especially if you're going second and you're up against force. You can still hit magic numbers. And then he also has a second effect, which is at the end of the battle that he attacked, you can put it into your soul to return one of your rear guards to your hand. So once again, we have the bouncing mechanics of Nubatama in him, but this time it's actually free, and he also adds soul with this effect. So with this bouncing effect, you can actually afford to call down your hand in the early game for some early game rush and still be able to return those cards that you called down. Right. So one of the best ways that I like to use Magatsu Gale's effect is I have this as a column, right, and then I attack, I move it into soul, return Sakura Fubuki to my hand. Return the booster to my hand, basically. All in all, Magatsu Gale is just a really great card that helps you that gives you a +1 and also allows you to activate on-place effects again. Its own effect being an on-place effect means that it can also be abusable with Hanzo, so you can potentially get 2 draws off of 1 Magatsu Gale on a Hanzo turn, so that's really neat as well. But yeah, I play Magatsu Gale at 2, mainly because your main priority with a counterblast is still for Zangetsu and Yamishibuki. In other words, you want to be spending most of a counterblast on your token generators, right? You want to ensure that you have enough counterblast for token generators. This guy is just an icing on the cake, and if you do have spare counterblast, then you can use it for him. Otherwise, most of the time I do find myself still using their counterblast effects to generate tokens for the cost of my grade 3s. And with that, we've run up the grade 3s and the grade 2s. We can now move on to our grade 1s. Once again, we are going to start off first with a new Evil Decoy token generator. This came with Tasogare Hanzo as well, and it is the Evil Stealth Dragon Tasogare. Okay, just put it here. Okay, so 4 copies. Let's have a look at this effect. Activated on rearguard circle, it can retire itself to call up to 2 Evil Decoy tokens to rearguard circle. And then, as an additional ability, if your Vanguard is a Hanzo, you can put a card from your hand into your soul to search your deck for up to 1 Hanzo, reveal it to your opponent, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. This ability is a hard once per turn, and for good reason, because it's super good to be used with Tasogare Hanzo. Now let's unpack this card. There's a lot of things going on here, and there's a reason it's probably the best grade 1 in his deck. So firstly, Tasogare is a free token generator. This is the first of its kind. All the other token generators that we have for the Evil Decoy tokens, right, have a cost of either a counterblast or Soul Blast 2 or stuff like that. But Tasogare just retires itself to get 2 out on the field. And secondly, Tasogare is a selective Hanzo searcher. Now granted, it does require a Vanguard to be a Hanzo, but most of the time you will be riding a Hanzo, right? You will not be riding this guy. If you only see this guy in the early hand, you might just want to return this Mizukaze back, because you can still be searched out with your grade 3 searchers later on, but your priority, mainly you want to be riding into a Hanzo, and with this, you can actually guarantee in an Akatsuki Hanzo every single game. Or if you're seeing too many Akatsuki Hanzos, you can guarantee a Tasogare Hanzo as well. Basically, Tasogare being able to fetch any Hanzo makes it a super versatile card that allows you to fetch out the Hanzo that you need most in a game state or in that situation. Being able to fetch out more Hanzos from the deck will also mean that you will be able to get more protect markers in a way, and also getting out Hanzos from the deck means you're getting out grade 3s from the deck, your deck thinning, and increasing your chances of checking into triggers as well. But that's not all. The third reason that Tasogare is so good is because it speeds up Tasogare Hanzo plays. It's another enabler just like Yamishibuki, and it's the reason why we can actually use Tasogare Hanzo as early as first grade 3 turn. So Tasogare's cost is to put a card from your hand into your soul. This means that you can put Tasogare Hanzo straight into the soul on your first grade 3 turn. This means that you can skip the superior ride skill of Hanzo, or you can skip just normal riding into Hanzo. You can just go straight put Hanzo into the soul and have a Tasogare Hanzo on your first grade 3 turn to be called out to make 4 attacks on your first grade 3 turn, with 2 of them being 32k. If you're going first, that's a lot of that's very high numbers against your opponent's grade 2 Vanguard. I remember just now I mentioned Tasogare Hanzo's first effect. Certain players may not be comfortable with using it. Well, with Tasogare you can just skip it, you can just pop it into the soul. And being able to search out another Hanzo after you pop that Tasogare into the soul means that you can search for a second Tasogare Hanzo that you can use on your opponent's turn, which further adds even more Tasogare Hanzos into your soul. All in all, Tasogare is just an amazing card. Being able to get out Evil Decoy tokens for free, whilst also setting up for your Tasogare Hanzo plays. Games where I do see multiple Tasogare are games where I know I'll be doing pretty well in, because Tasogare just sets up so many things for the deck. Just makes it much easier to play the deck overall. So with that, we want to be playing 4 copies of Tasogare. And then our next grade 1 is also another staple one. This is 4 copies of Stealth Rogue of the Night Sakura Fubuki. It has been in every single Nubatama deck in V Premium as to date because of how good this card is, its effect is. So on place on rearguard circle, if you have 3 or more units, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, it gets plus 3000 power until the end of turn. And if you only have 1 or less face-up cards in your damage zone, draw a card and countercharge. So Sakura Fubuki not only digs for pieces, but is also a countercharger for the deck. Being an on-place effect means that it's super abusable in Nubatama, because you have so many cards that can return your rearguards back to your hand. You can almost always just ensure that you have a Sakura Fubuki in your hand to be called the following turn. With Hanzo even, you could activate a Sakura Fubuki twice in a single game to potentially get 2 countercharges. I don't think I need to really talk much about Sakura Fubuki. It's just really good for the deck, especially in this deck. It can get kind of counterblast heavy with Zangetsu and Yamishibuki, with all of the grade 2s using counterblast, and Zangetsu only creates 1 token, and it's a main phase token generator. So you want to get 2 tokens, you need counterblast 2, and if this continues for multiple turns, it will definitely add up and you'll find yourself running out of counterblast. So having Sakura Fubukis will definitely help with counterblast resource management in this deck. So yeah, I'm playing 4 copies of Sakura Fubuki. Not like there's much other grade 1 options. This is probably one of the better ones. As for our last grade 1, once again it's another staple grade 1. It's just the grade 3 Searcher, Stealth Beast, Katari Gitsune. On plays on rearguard from your hand, top 5. Sorry, not rearguard, just on plays from hand, on Vanguard or rearguard, you can look at top 5 for your grade 3, add to your hand, and then discard 1. Really good in ensuring that you have your Hanzo right. Okay, and then he also has another effect which is continuous on rearguard circle. During your turn, if you have a token unit, it gets 5k. Luckily, the Hanzo deck uses Evil Decoy tokens, which are considered token units, so the power up will still be relevant, making him a 13k booster or attacker if you ever need to. So once again, not much to say. It's a pretty stable card, just a grade 3 Searcher. I only play 3 because I think the other 2 grade 1s are more important, and this is all I have in the deck for grade 3 Searchers, right? But being on plays means that, once again, in a clan like Nubatama and in a deck like Hanzo, it's abusable, it's spammable up to 2 times in a turn. But yeah, that's 3 Katari Gitsune, 13k boosters, 13k attackers. Now, let's move on to the grade 0s. Here's where the spice comes in. I'm playing 2 copies of this normal unit grade 0, main deck grade 0, Stealth Beast, Hagakure. Ever since Hanzo first came out, Hagakure has always been at the back of my mind as a potential card that you can play. So let's have a look at its effect first. It's on placed on rearguard and guardian circle. Choose one of the units and increase or decrease Hagakure's power and shield to match that unit until the end of the turn. So let's say you call it to rearguard circle, you have you have a Magatsu Gale on the field, it's 15k. His power becomes 15k. It's not add to its 4k, but it becomes that power. I love to use it with Akatsuki Hanzo. Hanzo can reach 32k on its own. This guy is 4k, but on plays, you can copy your Vanguard's power and have it hit for 32k as well. Not just that, Hanzo uses grade 0 rearguards as cost. Tasogare also uses. Yamishibuki gets power up when you have a grade 0 rearguard, and Hagakure is also a grade 0 rearguard. You guys should probably see where I'm getting at right now. So Hagakure actually has a lot of synergy with many of the cards in this deck. On a basic Hanzo turn, not only is Hagakure a 32k attacker or booster, but it can also be used as a retire fodder for your Tasogare Hanzo during a battle phase. You can just use Hagakure as your first few attacks or first few boosters, and then retire it with Tasogare Hanzo to multi-attack without needing any Evil Decoy tokens. You will definitely face games where you don't see much of your token generators, or you don't have enough counterblast for your token generators. Well, that's where Hagakure comes in handy, because it doubles as a grade 0 rearguard that you can use as retire fodder. In fact, if you use Hagakure as retire fodder for Hanzo, for Tasogare Hanzo, which generates an Evil Decoy token at the end of the turn, you can convert this into an Evil Decoy token in a way, which further increases your defense ever so slightly. Now that's not all. Hagakure's effect is also on plays, so in the event where your opponent doesn't kill it, you can just bounce it back into your hand and call it back the following turn for another free 32k attacker. Hagakure can also be used defensively, so if your hand has like 15k or 20k shields and you use them as guardians, and you can just throw this down to double in a way your shield value. All in all, Hagakure is a very versatile and flexible card that you can use for multiple situations, be it as a 32k base attacker, be it as a guardian that doubles your other guardian's power, rather defense, or you could even use it as retire fodder in desperate situations. All in all, Hagakure is definitely a card that I find myself relying quite a bit on, just because having a free 32k attacker is super good. It already hits higher than basically every other card in this deck for literally no cost. You just have to call it down from a hand and have, you know, a Hanzo as your Vanguard. Okay, so anyways, the starter, I play Ushimitsumaru, just to fit with the theme of Evil Stealth Dragons. I could play anyone, doesn't really matter. And then for our triggers, I am currently playing for 8 draws, 4 crits, and 4 heals. Okay, so why 8 draws? Well, firstly, 5k draws are good for retire fodder as well. Once again, the same logic as Hagakure. You will not always have token generators, and having additional things that you can retire as grade 0 rearguards will go a long way in terms of improving consistency in the deck. Most of the time you don't want to be calling down your 15k or 20k shields, so having this, guys, feels better to call your 5k draw triggers down as retire fodder. Secondly, with Tasogare Hanzo, you'll be discarding quite a bit, so having extra draws for more draw power will also go a long way in ensuring that you have the hand size and you can survive long enough to get as many Tasogare Hanzos into the soul and then kill your opponent with the Tasogare and Mizukaze play. Having more draws increases your longevity, I guess, in the game, and allows us to play better in the grind game. Also, draw triggers are the best triggers to be checked defensively, and I've been enjoying just like damage checking draw triggers and increasing my hand size even during my opponent's turn. As for the crits, I only play 4. I think 4 is enough right now for me. I do know that some people's arguments that you should play more crits in Hanzo is because you have quite big beat stakes, like Hanzo himself is 32k Vanguard. You have 32k rearguard attackers. Hamishibuki is also really big sometimes, and having more crits can push for more damage. But I think generally the deck is very much still piece reliant, so I think I would still prefer having more draws, especially since the deck can already multi-attack. I think I can tone down a bit on crit and try to improve the consistency of the deck with the draw triggers. If not, you guys could also go for 6 draws and 6 crit, because draws, while they do increase your hand size, their shield value is like 3 times lower than, you know, regular triggers. They're only 5k. Regular crits are 15k shield. So if you increase the number of draws in your deck, in a way you're also reducing the total shield value of cards that you have in your deck, which may not be the best option. But I also have another argument for that, in that this deck is a Protect 1 deck, so having more draws, having more cards in your hand to discard makes using Protect 1 easier. And also, we have Evil Decoy tokens, which other decks don't have, and these are additional defenses as well, which will make up for the fact that we're playing draw triggers which have less defense than crit triggers and stuff. So for now, I think 8 draws and 4 crits work fine for me. You guys can go different routes. You can go 7-5, you can go 6-6, but I will still highly recommend having more draws, just to make up for your quite small hand size and the fact that the deck doesn't really plus that much. Heal triggers are mandatory for off. Once Heal Guardians come out, I will be testing out the Heal Guardians in the deck, and I think Heal Guardians will be very much needed going forward in V Premium, but of course I haven't tested them out yet. I can't really say for sure. Right now we just have this 20k show, very nice. And with that, we've basically come to the end of the deck profile. Right, so as for the alternatives, I guess not much. I honestly feel like these cards are make up the main core of a Hanzo deck. There really isn't any good alternatives out there that you can replace these cards with. We have specific token generators, we have the most generic cards here, and we have our guard restrict here. There's not really much that you can take out to replace for any other thing, and I think right now this is the most consistent way that I see myself playing Hanzo. But I think if you really want to talk about alternatives, you can have alternative Evil Decoy token generators like Kurogiri. It's just that I find Kurogiri a bit too costly and not really that worth it right now with Kage Sarashi in the deck. But Kurogiri still blasts 2 bounces itself back and calls 2 Evil Decoy tokens. Most of the time you'll be able to use it like once a game, because your other cards in your soul will be Tasogare Hanzos, which you don't want to be soul blasting them, and you also want to keep a grade 3 in your soul to soul blast out with Mizukaze. And you don't really build soul other than Makatsu Gale, which also spends soul. So all in all, Kurogiri isn't that useful, right? So I've taken him out. Previously the deck played Tsunamasa and Aogita, which are cards that can soul charge. But now that they are not in the deck, I don't think Kurogiri is that good of a token generator as compared to the others. Alternative builds, I guess I have seen players playing Hanzo with Koku Shigarasu, the Stealth Beast, which is infamous for, and that build is infamous for basically being a very discard heavy variant of the deck. You clear up your opponent's entire field, while making them discard 5 cards from their hand on top of the cards that they discard with Hanzo. So it's a really it's a deck that focuses a lot on hand and field destruction. But I think the deck can be a bit more taxing on the resources, especially since you need to discard 2 protect markers. Also, sorry, not protect, since you need to discard 2 sentinels and you need to soul blast 3 as well. Though I could see why players are choosing to play Koku Shigarasu. It's because the new Tasogare Hanzo accelerates gift generation, as I've mentioned. So I guess in a way, if you're choosing protect 1, you have more, it's easier to discard for cost like Koku Shigarasu. But then again, a lot of clans right now in V Premium have so much plussing that they can kind of recover from it. And I just find it a bit too risky sometimes. I personally prefer this one, this build, which is more stable, where I just focus on getting Tasogares into the soul, multi-attacking with it, and then closing games off with Mizukaze. But of course, you guys are free to try out the Koku Shigarasu build as well. I think that one can be very fun as well. I would know that because I used to play Koku Shigarasu with Hanzo, and basically when you get your opponent to no hand on your kill turn, you pretty much win. But this deck can also do the same with Mizukaze, so I think both decks have their merits. I just personally prefer this one more. Right, so that was the Hanzo deck. It's a deck that has both control tactics and aggressive tactics now with the new Tasogare support. And I'm glad that Busho gave the deck much better token generators in the form of Yamishibuki and Kage Sarashi. These are super good token generators, and I feel like they've really made the deck much better than before. The deck now also hits for pretty decent to high numbers, with multiple 32k attackers alongside Yamishibuki, which gets power up for every grade 0 rearguard, and it can very easily hit for 29 for heal guards. Coupled with board wiping and discard tactics, the deck is also good against clans, against other decks that rely on their field. I guess in terms of weakness, the deck is kind of piece reliant. That's why I'm playing so many draws. But some games where you don't see your pieces, then the deck really falls hard. While the Hanzo deck may not be the strongest Nubatama build right now, I think Shiranui is still a bit more aggressive than this deck. But I think the Hanzo deck does not lose out in terms of fun, in terms of price. I think the deck is really cheap, with Akatsuki Hanzo being the most expensive one because it's a VR, and Busho is not reprinting any VRs, and it's kind of an old VR. So for those of you who don't own Akatsuki Hanzo, it's probably the most pricey thing in the deck. The rest of the deck has been reprinted, like Zangetsu, and are going to be reprinted like your grade 3 searches, and everything else is really cheap from Clan Selection as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile, and if you guys have any more queries or suggestions for the deck, do leave them in the comment section down below. I'll make sure to reply to them, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next video. Bye guys!